Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.
The late afternoon sun cast long, dramatic shadows across the living room of Portia's cozy home, painting the walls in hues of amber and gold. It was a deceptive warmth, for the air inside was thick with a chilling tension, a silence so profound it seemed to swallow all sound. Portia Robinson sat on the edge of her sofa, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her knuckles white. The soft, expensive fabric of the cushion felt like sandpaper against her skin. Every nerve was alight, a live wire of fear and resolve. She was waiting. Across from her, her daughter, Trina, fidgeted with the fringe of a throw pillow, her brow furrowed with a concern that had been growing for weeks. She watched her mother, this pillar of strength and compassion who had always been her rock, now seemingly carved from something brittle and fragile. Portia's face, usually so expressive and warm, was a mask of carefully controlled turmoil. "Mom?" Trina's voice was soft, cutting through the heavy quiet. "You've been somewhere else all day. Are you okay? Is it the baby?" Portia's hand instinctively went to the gentle, firm swell of her abdomen, a subconscious gesture of protection that had become second nature. The baby, her miracle, her late-in-life surprise, kicked softly as if in response. A tiny, fluttering reminder of the life growing within her, and the cataclysmic secret it carried. I'm fine, sweetheart," Portia said, her voice a strained whisper that convinced neither of them. "Just a little tired." "You're more than tired," Trina insisted, leaning forward. "You've been like this for months, ever since you found out you were pregnant. It's like you're carrying the weight of the world, not just a baby. You can talk to me, you know. Whatever it is. If only it were that simple." Portia offered a weak, tremulous smile. How could she begin to explain that the weight she carried was the potential destruction of their entire family, the shattering of the very foundation upon which Trina had built her life? The doorbell chimed, a cheerful, melodic sound that felt like a gunshot in the tense room. Portia flinched. "Are you expecting someone?" Trina asked, her eyes narrowing slightly. Portia took a deep, shuddering breath, the kind that was meant to steady you but instead made you aware of every frantic beat of your heart. "Yes," she said, her voice barely audible. It's time." She rose on unsteady legs and moved to the door. With her hand on the knob, she paused, closing her eyes for a fleeting second, sending a silent, desperate prayer out into the universe. Then, she opened it. Standing on her porch was Curtis Ashford. Her ex-husband. The man she had loved, lost, and with whom she had built a complicated, enduring friendship. He was her person, in so many ways. His handsome face was etched with the same concern Trina had shown, but in his eyes, there was a deeper, more profound understanding of the storms life could bring. "Portia," he said, his voice a low, calming rumble. "You said it was important." "It is," she whispered, stepping aside to let him in. "More important than you can imagine." Curtis entered, his presence immediately filling the room. He gave Trina a warm, paternal smile, which she returned, though her confusion was now palpable. The dynamic had shifted. This was no longer a quiet evening between mother and daughter. This was a summons. Before anyone could speak again, another figure appeared in the still-open doorway. Marcus Taggart. Trina's biological father. A man of quiet intensity and unwavering loyalty, his relationship with Portia was a tapestry woven with threads of a youthful, passionate love, painful separation, and a hard-won, respectful co-parenting bond. His gaze swept the room, taking in Portia's pallor, Curtis's presence, and Trina's bewilderment. "Portia?" Taggart said, his tone cautious. "Your message was cryptic. Said it was a family emergency." "It is," Portia repeated, her voice gaining a sliver of strength from sheer necessity. "Please, Marcus. Come in. Close the door." Taggart did as he was asked, the soft click of the latch sounding like the sealing of a tomb. The three most important people in her world were now in the same room, their attention focused solely on her. The triangle of her past, present, and future. The air was so thick with unspoken questions it was difficult to breathe. Trina looked from Curtis to Taggart, her mind clearly racing. "Mom, what's going on? Why are both Dad and Curtis here?" Portia gestured for them all to sit. Curtis took the armchair, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. Taggart remained standing, a sentinel by the fireplace, his arms crossed. Trina stayed on the sofa, her body angled toward her mother, a portrait of anxious anticipation. Portia remained standing, needing the higher ground, needing to feel some semblance of control. She wrapped her arms around herself, a self-soothing gesture that did little to calm the tempest within. "I asked you all here today," she began, her voice trembling, "because there is something I have to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago. It's about the baby." She saw Curtis's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. He had been her rock throughout this pregnancy. He'd been there for the first sonogram, had held her hair back during the worst of the morning sickness, had reassured her that she was strong enough, young enough, wonderful enough to be a mother again. He had never once pressured her about paternity, respecting her need for space, her claim that she needed time to process everything. He had assumed, as had everyone, that the father was a fleeting, insignificant figure from a brief encounter, a ghost from her past she wished to forget. Taggart's expression was more guarded. His history with Portia was ancient, from a time before Trina, a time of youthful passion and a love that was ultimately not built to last. He had moved on, found love and stability with Stella, but he would always care for Portia as the mother of his child. "The father," Portia continued, the words sticking in her throat like shards of glass. "I've been lying. To all of you. But mostly, I've been lying to myself." "Portia, you don't owe anyone an explanation," Curtis said, his voice firm and supportive. "Your medical history is your own." "No, Curtis," she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It's not just my history. It's our history. All of ours." She looked directly at Trina, her heart breaking at the innocent confusion in her daughter's eyes. "Trina, baby, what I'm about to say, it's going to change things. It might change how you see me. And I am so sorry for that. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I was protecting you. Protecting all of us." "Mom, you're scaring me," Trina whispered, her voice small. Portia's gaze then shifted to Taggart. His dark eyes were locked on her, and she could see the gears turning in his mind, the detective in him piecing together clues he hadn't known he'd been collecting. The timing of her pregnancy, her evasiveness, her palpable terror. Finally, she turned her tear-filled eyes to Curtis. The man who had shown her what mature, enduring love could be. The man she had thought, for one glorious, fleeting moment, she could build a new future with. She saw the unwavering support in his face, the absolute faith that whatever she was about to say, he would be there to catch her. It was that faith that made the truth feel like a betrayal of the highest order. "The night this baby was conceived," Portia said, her voice cracking, "it wasn't a random encounter. It wasn't a stranger. It was a moment of profound weakness. Of confusion. My life was in turmoil. My relationship with," she glanced at Curtis, "everything felt like it was falling apart. I felt lost. And I reached for a familiar anchor in a storm I never saw coming." She swallowed hard, the memory of that night washing over her, a blur of expensive whiskey, soft lighting, and the intoxicating, dangerous comfort of a shared, painful history. It had felt like coming home and getting lost all at once. "The father of my baby is," she squeezed her eyes shut, unable to bear watching the truth dawn on their faces. She forced them open, her gaze landing squarely, devastatingly, on the man by the fireplace. "It's Marcus." The silence that followed was not merely an absence of sound. It was a physical entity, a vacuum that sucked all the air, all the light, all the warmth from the room. It was a silence so absolute and profound it seemed to ring in their ears. Trina's face went blank with sheer, uncomprehending shock. Her brain, it seemed, had simply refused to process the words. She looked from her mother to her father and back again, her mouth slightly agape. Curtis, who had been leaning forward, slowly straightened up in his chair. The supportive, open expression on his face froze, then shattered, piece by piece, like a pane of glass struck by a stone. His eyes, usually so warm and perceptive, went cold and distant. He looked at Portia as if he were seeing a stranger, a ghost, a forgery of the woman he thought he knew. Taggart was the first to break the stillness. He uncrossed his arms, his body stiff. "What?" The single word was a low, disbelieving rasp. "The baby," Portia repeated, her voice now a broken whisper, devoid of all its former strength. "It's yours, Marcus." The dam of silence broke. "No," Trina gasped, the word a pained exhale. "No, that's not possible. You and Dad, that was a lifetime ago. You're with Curtis. You and Dad are friends. Co-parents. This can't be happening." "It was one night," Portia pleaded, her hands outstretched toward her daughter, a futile gesture of supplication. "Just one terrible, misguided night. It was after Stella's art show. We ran into each other at the Metro Court bar. We were both raw. You and Curtis had just had that huge blow-up, Trina, and you were so angry with both of us. Marcus was feeling the distance with Stella, feeling like an outsider in his own life. We started talking, and one drink led to another, and we were comforting each other. And then, it just happened. It was a mistake. A catastrophic, life-altering mistake." Taggart finally found his voice, his detective's mind latching on to the details. "The first week of November," he stated, his tone flat, clinical, as if distancing himself from the emotional carnage. "The night of the blackout." Portia nodded miserably. "The power went out in the whole block. We were stuck there. In that hotel room. And in the dark, we lost our way." Curtis finally spoke. His voice was dangerously quiet, a stark contrast to the storm raging in his eyes. "The blackout." He let out a short, bitter laugh that held no humor. "I remember that night. I called you, Portia. I called you a dozen times. I was worried sick. You never answered. You texted me the next morning and said your phone had died, that you'd gotten caught in the storm and checked into a hotel to wait it out. You said you were alone. I was going to tell you," Portia cried, turning her desperate gaze to him. "Curtis, I swear, I was. But then you and we started to find our way back to each other. Things were getting good again, better than they'd ever been. And I found out I was pregnant. And I was terrified. I thought if I told you the truth, I would lose you forever. I thought I could just handle it. That I could raise this baby and we could still be a family, you and me and Trina and the baby. I thought the past could stay in the past." "The past?" Curtis shot to his feet, his composure finally shattering. "Portia, the past is sitting right here in this room. The past is the father of your child. My God, all this time, all these months I've been by your side, going to appointments, talking about names, dreaming about a future with you and this child, and the whole time, you were lying to me. You let me believe this was our second chance. You let me play the fool. I didn't mean to. I was trying to protect what we had. What we had was built on a lie," he roared, the force of his anger making Trina flinch. "You built our entire reconciliation on a foundation of quicksand. Did you ever stop to think about what this would do to me? To Trina? To Taggart? To Stella? My mother loves you, Portia. She considers you a daughter. And you've been hiding this bomb, waiting for it to destroy her son's life, too. I know. I know how wrong it was." Portia sobbed, the tears now flowing freely, carving paths through her makeup. "I have lived with this guilt every single day. Every time you touched my stomach, every time you called the baby our little miracle, I felt like I was dying inside. I wanted it to be yours, Curtis. With every fiber of my being, I wished it was yours. But it's not," Curtis said, his voice dropping back to that chilling quiet. "It's his." He gestured toward Taggart, who looked as if he'd been physically struck. Taggart was staring at Portia, a maelstrom of emotions warring on his face: shock, betrayal, anger, and a dawning, horrifying realization of the consequences. "Stella," he breathed. "My God, Portia, what have we done? Stella can never find out about this. It would destroy her. She's been through so much. She trusts me. She trusts you." "So did I," Curtis interjected, his voice like ice. The focus then shifted to the quietest person in the room. Trina had been sitting perfectly still, her eyes wide, staring at a fixed point on the carpet as if the intricate pattern held the answers to this impossible situation. Her parents, the two people whose love had created her, had created another child. A sibling. A brother or sister who would be, in the most bizarre of twists, her niece or nephew in terms of family structure, but her full sibling in blood. The world, her world, had just been turned inside out. "Trina, baby, please say something," Portia begged, her voice ragged with grief. Trina slowly lifted her head. The confusion in her eyes had been replaced by a cold, clear fury that Portia had never seen before. "All this time," Trina began, her voice trembling with a rage she could barely contain. "All this time, you let me worry about you. You let me think you were just stressed or that maybe you were having second thoughts about the pregnancy. I covered for you with Curtis. I told him you were just hormonal, that you needed space. I defended you. And the whole time, you were lying to everyone. You were lying to me. I was trying to protect you from this exact pain," Portia cried. "No!" Trina shouted, springing to her feet. "You were protecting yourself. You were selfish. You didn't want to deal with the fallout, so you just pretended it wasn't happening. You let us all live in this fake reality while you knew the truth was going to blow it all to hell. You and Dad, my God, you're both old enough to know better. How could you be so stupid? How could you be so reckless?" "Trina," Taggart said, his voice heavy with his own shame. "Don't talk to your mother that way. Don't you defend her." Trina whirled on him, her finger jabbing in his direction. "And don't you dare try to parent me right now. You're just as guilty. You were there. You knew you were married to Stella. You knew Mom was trying to work things out with Curtis. But you did it anyway. Both of you. You're a pair of cheating liars." The word cheating hung in the air, ugly and final. It was the truth they had all been skirting around. It wasn't just a mistake. It was infidelity. On both their parts. "I have to get out of here," Trina choked out, grabbing her purse from the coffee table. "I can't look at either of you right now." "Trina, wait!" Portia moved to block her path, her hands held out in a pleading gesture. "Please, don't go. We need to talk about this as a family." "A family?" Trina let out a harsh, broken laugh. "What family? The family where my mother and father are having a secret baby behind their partners' backs? The family built on a lie so big I don't even know who you are anymore. There is no family here. You destroyed it the moment you got into that hotel room with Dad." She pushed past Portia, her shoulder brushing against her mother's, a contact that felt like a physical blow. She yanked the door open and fled into the twilight, the sound of her running footsteps echoing in the dreadful silence she left behind. Portia stood frozen, her body racked with silent sobs. The pain of Trina's words was a physical wound, deeper and more agonizing than any she had ever known. Curtis watched her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. The love that had once shone so brightly in his eyes was gone, replaced by a vast, empty disappointment. "I loved you, Portia," he said, his voice hollow. "I thought we were going to spend the rest of our lives together. I was ready to be a father to your child. Our child." He shook his head slowly, a gesture of finality. "But I can't do this. I can't be part of this web of secrets and lies. I won't." He didn't shout. He didn't curse. He simply turned and walked out the same door Trina had, his exit quiet and dignified and utterly, irrevocably final. And then there were two. Portia and Taggart stood in the wreckage of the lives they had just obliterated. The cozy living room now felt like a crime scene. Portia finally let her legs give way, collapsing onto the sofa, her body trembling uncontrollably. Taggart remained standing, a statue of despair. He ran a hand over his face, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. "She's right, you know," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Trina. We were selfish. We were reckless. We destroyed everything for one night. What are we going to do, Marcus?" Portia whispered, the question hanging in the ruined air between them. "I don't know," he admitted, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I have to go home to Stella. I have to look my wife in the eye and pretend that my world hasn't just ended. I have to live with the fact that I've betrayed the best woman I've ever known." He looked at Portia, and for a moment, the old affection was there, tangled up with the resentment and the shock. "And you have to carry this baby. Our baby. In a town that's going to feast on this scandal for years." He didn't say goodbye. He just turned and walked out, closing the door softly behind him, leaving Portia utterly alone. She sat in the deepening darkness, the only light coming from the street lamps outside that cast long, skeletal shadows across the floor. Her hands drifted to her stomach, where the baby was now moving more vigorously, as if stirred by the tumult. This child, conceived in a moment of passion and poor judgment, was now the epicenter of a cataclysm that had shattered her relationship with her daughter, destroyed her future with the man she loved, and fractured the fragile peace of her entire extended family. The revelation was out. The secret was no longer hers to bear alone. But the weight of it felt heavier than ever. She had told the truth to protect the baby from a life built on lies, but in doing so, she had ensured that this child would enter a world of conflict, judgment, and broken trust. Portia Robinson, a woman who had dedicated her life to healing others, had just inflicted a wound on her own family that she had no idea how to mend. And as she sat there in the silent, lonely dark, she understood that this was only the beginning. The fallout from her confession would ripple through Port Charles for months, maybe years, to come. The life she had known was over. All that was left was the devastating, uncertain future, and the tiny, innocent life growing within her, whose very existence was now a permanent, living reminder of the night everything fell apart. When Portia finally gathers the courage to speak the truth, the air in the Ashford home feels heavy with dread. Curtis senses that something is wrong even before the words leave her lips. He has seen the uneasiness in her eyes, the way she has avoided certain conversations, and the tension in her voice whenever the baby comes up. But even as his instincts tell him that Portia is about to deliver devastating news, nothing could prepare him for the words that follow. With her heart racing and tears threatening to spill, Portia tells Curtis that he is not the father of her unborn baby. The silence that fills the room after the confession is deafening, and for a moment, it feels as though time has stopped. Curtis stares at her, unable to process what he has just heard. His mind races back to every moment they have shared since the pregnancy was announced, every time he allowed himself to hope that this baby would be a fresh start for them. His voice cracks as he asks her the question that has been burning in his mind, if not him, then who? Portia's hesitation before answering is almost unbearable, but finally, with trembling hands, she speaks the name that changes everything, Spencer Cassadine. The revelation is as shocking as it is heartbreaking. Curtis cannot wrap his mind around the idea that Portia has been carrying Spencer's child. The age difference, the tangled history, and the fact that Spencer is closely connected to Trina make the situation even more explosive. Portia explains that her involvement with Spencer was a mistake, one born of a moment of weakness and confusion when she felt her marriage slipping away and her life unraveling. She never intended for it to happen, and she certainly never intended for it to result in a child. But intentions no longer matter, because the reality is staring them both in the face. Curtis's reaction is raw and visceral. He feels betrayed in a way he has never felt before, cut to the core by Portia's choices. The thought that the baby he has been preparing to love and raise belongs to someone else is devastating enough, but the fact that the father is Spencer Cassadine makes it unbearable. Curtis cannot believe that Portia would betray him with someone so young, someone so close to Trina's world. It feels like an unforgivable violation, and he tells her as much in a voice filled with both fury and heartbreak. For Portia, the confession is like tearing open an old wound, but she knows there is no going back. She insists that Curtis deserves to know the truth now rather than later, but her words offer little comfort. Curtis storms out of the house, needing space to breathe, leaving Portia in tears and wondering if she has just destroyed her marriage beyond repair. Meanwhile, the news spreads quickly through Port Charles. Trina is one of the first to learn about her mother's revelation, and her reaction is one of utter disbelief. The idea that her mother is carrying Spencer's child rocks her to her core. Trina has fought hard to balance her own complicated relationship with Spencer, and now the fact that he could be tied to her family forever through her mother's unborn baby is almost too much to handle. She feels betrayed, embarrassed, and furious all at once, and she lashes out at Portia for her choices. The mother-daughter bond that has already been tested so many times faces perhaps its greatest challenge yet. As for Spencer, the revelation turns his world upside down. He has been struggling with his own demons, trying to find his place in the world after years of Cassadine family turmoil. The idea of becoming a father was never part of his immediate plans, especially under circumstances as messy as these. Spencer's initial reaction is disbelief, followed quickly by anger that Portia would bring this news into his life without warning. At the same time, a part of him cannot help but feel the weight of responsibility. If the baby truly is his, what role will he play? Can he step up and be the father that child needs, or will his own immaturity and complicated history make him unfit for the job? The revelation also has ripple effects for the rest of Port Charles. Nicholas Cassadine, already estranged from his son, is thrown into turmoil at the thought of becoming a grandfather so soon. Laura Collins, always the voice of reason, tries to support Spencer while also encouraging him to take responsibility if the paternity is confirmed. And the Ashfords, still reeling from Curtis's heartbreak, must decide how to rally around him as his marriage crumbles under the weight of another devastating secret. For Portia, the fallout is just beginning. She has told the truth, but the truth may cost her everything: her marriage, her daughter's trust, and her standing in the community. And though the truth is out, the question remains: what comes next for Portia, Curtis, Spencer, and everyone else caught in the storm of this shocking revelation?